Welcome to Tale of Deception. Upon finishing, please pass this story on to someone who could benefit from it. This tale unfolds about a parent who discovered that love isn't always stronger than avarice. 5 years ago, my daughter Natalie approached me with dreams in her eyes and a handwritten business proposal for an artisanal candle company. She aspired to create eco-friendly, hand-poured candles, a concept she had been fascinated by since college. While she possessed enthusiasm, creativity, and a substantial Instagram following, she lacked the necessary funds, business knowledge, and expertise to transform her hobby into a legitimate firm. At that time, I had recently sold my stake in a manufacturing company after dedicating 2 decades of my life to its growth. At 53, I was preparing to work part-time as a consultant and travel with my wife. However, when your only child gazes at you with such hope, you don't refuse. Instead, you reply, "Show me the figures." The figures were abysmal. Charming yet abysmal. Her estimated expenditures were unrealistic. Her income forecasts were fanciful, and her schedule envisioned flawless execution. I spent 3 days revising the entire strategy. Then I issued her a check for $80,000, not as a loan, but an investment. I acquired 40% ownership in Lumiere Candle Company, leaving her with 60%. I insisted on having a formalized operating agreement, business bank account, and all the necessary arrangements. My lawyer prepared the documents. Natalie signed them without giving much thought to the details, too eager to appreciate the moment. "Dad, this is fantastic," she said, embracing me. "I promise I'll make you proud." "I'm already proud," I replied. "Now let's turn this into success." The first year was a beautiful, chaotic whirlwind of exhaustion. I emerged from retirement to serve as her operations manager, supply chain coordinator, and voice of reason. I negotiated with suppliers, established her LLC, created the financial systems, hired her first 2 employees, while Natalie dedicated herself to product development and social media, leveraging her strengths. In a leased commercial kitchen in an industrial park, my wife Margaret and I collaborated on the website we ran together. We dedicated ourselves to long, demanding days for 6 months straight, eventually mastering inventory management, cash flow management, customer retention, as well as Instagram algorithms and influencer marketing. As a duo, we became profitable by month 9 and expanded our team and facilities within 2 years, employing 12 people and reaching 7 figures in revenue. Natalie, my partner in this venture, was recognized in a local business magazine. I proudly framed the article and displayed it in my home office. However, 3 months later, she met Connor at a trade show in Denver. He was a young man from private equity with an impressive suit, an MBA from a prestigious institution, and an air of self-assurance that seemed to stem from a lack of personal failure. Despite my attempts, I couldn't bring myself to like him. He treated Margaret politely and made Natalie extremely happy. His scrutiny over the business gave me a feeling of discomfort. During our engagement, he displayed a keen interest in our financial details, not out of curiosity, but for thorough investigation. At their rehearsal dinner, I overheard him saying to Natalie that her father had built something significant there, implying that with strategic advice, it could become a genuine company. Despite this, I chose to ignore it during their wedding. However, after the honeymoon, Connor started visiting the office, initially just dropping by and bringing Natalie lunch. Gradually, he attended meetings, offering suggestions, proposing strategic partnerships, pointing out operational inefficiencies, and suggesting marketing strategies more complex than our current approach. Some of his ideas were beneficial, I must concede. He possessed legitimate business education and contacts that we lacked. However, his approach made our efforts seem trivial. It felt like we were pretending to be business people, while he was the genuine article. He'd often advise, "Natalie, think bigger," implying that my father had given me a solid start, but there were untapped resources. He suggested professional management, stating that I was leaving money on the table. The phrase, "Your dad did great getting you started," became his go-to remark, as if I had outgrown training wheels. For months post-wedding, Connor presented an offer. He wanted to introduce external investors, acquaintances from his private equity firm. They'd provide capital for growth, increase production, open retail outlets, possibly franchise. In return, they'd take 30% ownership. His share would stem from restructuring the partnership. Upon questioning, I asked where the 30% came from. He replied that we'd all proportionally dilute our shares. This meant Natalie would drop from 60% to 42%, me from 40% to 28%, and Connor would enter with a 30%. Upon quick calculation, I understood the implications. In unity, he and Natalie would amass 72%. Regarding the company I founded and nurtured, I'd be a minority stakeholder. I need to consider this, I responded. Unsurprisingly, Connor replied with composure. Feel free to deliberate, but such chances don't linger indefinitely. Natalie appears keen on it. That was the moment I understood this wasn't a proposition, it was a done deal. He had already persuaded her. That evening, I pored over our operating agreement with my lawyer, Patricia, who has safeguarded my interests for 15 years. Can he do this? I inquired. Carefully reviewing the papers, Patricia responded. He can't without your approval. Any equity restructuring necessitates unanimous consent from all existing partners. However, Daniel, I have a different concern. Have you been left out of significant business decisions recently? I pondered on it. Connor has been attending most strategic meetings now. Often, he and Natalie discuss strategies at their home. They call it dinner. I informed her. Are you invited? Not necessarily, Patricia cautioned, her face clouding. I want you to be aware of something. If they start making critical business moves without your involvement, if they begin signing contracts or agreements unbeknownst to you, it could potentially give them grounds to claim you've vacated management. It's a remote possibility, but with the right legal representation, they might argue for a compulsory sale at a diminished value. That's preposterous. I'm there 6 days a week. I'm merely sharing what I've witnessed in family businesses when an MBA-holding son-in-law becomes involved. Stay alert. Afterward, I found it difficult to sleep at home. Margaret held my hand in the dark. Speak with Natalie, she suggested. She's your daughter. She loves you. I attempted to reach out. I invited Natalie for lunch, just the two of us. She arrived 20 minutes late, preoccupied, glancing at her phone. Sweetheart, I have concerns about Connor's proposal. I started. Dad, it's a promising offer. We need to expand. Our revenue has tripled over the past 3 years, making us profitable. However, our stability isn't sufficient anymore. Connor believes we hold a strong market position, but he thinks we should seize this opportunity before competitors surpass us. Connor poses the question, what do you say? Her gaze held an expression I had never seen before, a mix of impatience and slight condescension. I trust my husband's judgment on scaling investment strategies, given his Wharton education. I built a company from scratch, sold it for $8 million. It was manufacturing, but this is consumer product branding, requiring different expertise. I've been building this brand with you for 5 years, and you did well to get us started. However, Connor can help us reach the next level. Essentially, I felt like I built the house, but became unnecessary once people moved in. After paying for lunch and driving back to the office, I realized that. Over the subsequent 2 months, I felt increasingly sidelined as my responsibilities dwindled. Now, Connor occupied our shared office space daily. Important decisions were being made in meetings I wasn't summoned to. Natalie casually mentioned new projects that had already been decided upon. For instance, on a Monday, she mentioned we were changing glass container suppliers. But I questioned the necessity of this change. Our existing supplier offered competitive pricing. Connor had secured a better deal, it seemed. I should have been part of those negotiations. Establishing supplier relationships is crucial. Yet, when I voiced my concern, I was told, it's handled. The term felt like a slap. So, I began documenting every decision made without me, every meeting I wasn't invited to, and every instance where something was declared as handled or already decided. Later, during the board meeting, Patricia had advised me to keep records of everything. Previously, Natalie and I had informally made decisions over coffee. However, Connor advocated for more formal governance. This meeting took place in our conference room, with Natalie at the head of the table, Connor beside her, and me opposite them. To my surprise, a woman I hadn't met before sat to their right, Veronica Chun, a business consultant that Connor had engaged to evaluate our operations. Veronica gave a professional greeting, displaying a prepared presentation on her laptop. Nice to meet you, Daniel, she said. For the past 3 weeks, I've been examining Lumiere's operations, and I have some suggestions. It turns out they had engaged a consultant to analyze my work for 3 weeks without informing me. Veronica's presentation was comprehensive and damaging. Veronica commended the establishment and pointed out multiple inefficiencies within our operations. My vendor relationships were satisfactory, yet not optimized. Our financial systems served their purpose, but lacked scalability. My management approach was hands-on, which potentially hindered expansion. Each presentation subtly suggested that I was the bottleneck. The solution, Veronica summarized, is to recruit inexperienced COO from scaled consumer product companies. This move would enable the founding team to concentrate on strategic development while overseeing operations becomes the expertise of a specialized professional. I glanced at Natalie, who avoided eye contact. Natalie, I said with caution, can we discuss privately? Any concerns you have can be voiced here, Dad. We're all part of the same team. Are we? Connor leaned in. Daniel, I understand change is challenging, but take pride. You've created something valuable enough to outgrow its initial framework. That's success, Natalie eventually replied. What are you suggesting? She asked. We're proposing a shift in your role to an advisory position. You'd retain your equity and continue to receive distributions, but the day-to-day responsibilities would be delegated to new management. This way, you could retire properly, fulfill your travel plans with your mother. An advisory role entails consulting on significant decisions and sharing institutional knowledge, but you wouldn't need to be present daily. I rose from my seat. I require some fresh air, I said. I exited into the parking lot and phoned Patricia. They're pushing me out, I informed her. Don't resign, she advised instantly. Don't quit. Don't consent to anything. Don't sign anything. Present yourself at my office tomorrow morning. Bring every document concerning the business. That night, I sifted through 5 years' worth of files, operating agreements, partnership documents, bank account authorizations, lease contracts, supplier agreements, every single carefully crafted document from when we launched this company. The clause I pushed for but went unnoticed by Natalie, concerning any significant adjustments to business operations or management structure, necessitated approval from shareholders holding at least 75% of the equity. Her 60% wasn't sufficient on its own. She either needed my 40% or I had to leave completely. The following morning, Patricia and I spent 3 hours in her office going over everything. Here's the situation, she explained. They plan to make your position difficult until you either resign or consent to their reorganization. If they push for resignation, they will argue that I abandoned my managerial role. If I agree to reorganize, I lose my voting rights. Either way, Connor gains control over a successful company he didn't develop. What should I do? Gather evidence, she advised. Don't resign. Don't agree to anything. And Daniel, consider whether you want to battle for this company or secure your earnings. This is my daughter's aspiration, isn't it? But I wonder if it remains her dream or if it has become Connor's target for acquisition. Upon returning to the office, I found Connor seated in my chair using my computer, merely keeping up with some emails from suppliers. He remarked nonchalantly, staying put. I assumed since you were moving to an advisory role, you wouldn't require this office space anymore. Next week, we're interviewing COO candidates. They will need a workspace. I stood there staring at the man occupying my workspace where I had tirelessly built my daughter's dream, and something became clear. Leave my chair, I said calmly. Connor smiled back. Daniel, move from my chair. He rose gradually, hands in a pretend surrender gesture. No need to be possessive. We are all adults here. Natalie walked into the room. Dad, what's happening? Your husband was using my computer without consent, I replied. Connor is assisting with the supplier transition. Let's not make this awkward. I'm not causing any awkwardness. I'm just stating facts. I'm setting limits here. Until it's officially communicated otherwise, this remains my office within the company I founded. All right, Natalie responded curtly. If you want it formalized, we can do that during our board meeting on Friday. We'll make it official then. The following Friday's meeting was held at Connor's private equity firm's conference room rather than at our usual facility. Present were Natalie, Connor, and Veronica, with a new addition, a 50-year-old man named A-Man who had COO experience at 3 scaled consumer brands. Daniel, Connor initiated, we'd like to extend an offer. We understand you're not yet prepared to fully relinquish control, so here's our proposition. You'll assume the role of chairman of the board. It's a ceremonial position acknowledging your founding role. You'll receive regular distributions based on your equity stake, and we propose a consulting contract for 20 hours per month at your current salary, adjusted accordingly. Let me clarify it. Represents a 75% pay reduction. 40% of my equity remains constant. You retain your ownership share. However, operational control no longer lies with you. The new COO will report to Natalie as CEO, and while your input would be sought on significant strategic decisions, defining significant includes acquisition offers, expansions costing over $500,000, and major level changes. All other matters such as suppliers, hiring, contracts, and day-to-day business operations will proceed without your involvement. I need some time to consider this. We require a decision by Monday. If there's no smooth transition on your part, we may have to investigate alternative solutions for management restructuring. In essence, you're not being kicked out. Instead, we're offering a respectful transition, which entails a 75% pay reduction since you're no longer working full-time. I will give you my answer by Monday. Over the weekend, I was with Patricia and Margaret. They discussed various possibilities if my rights are violated without my approval and I'm forced out. Suing for breach of the business agreement is a possibility, but it could involve years of litigation and irreversibly damage your relationship with your daughter. It may already be damaged, Margaret empathized, gripping my hand. Or you could choose to leave. You don't require the money. We are financially secure. Perhaps it's not worth fighting. But it's not about the money for me. It's about them trying to erase me from something we jointly created. Patricia presented another solution. The business agreement has a buyout clause, she explained. Any partner can invoke it. If you do, the company would have to buy back your shares at fair market value within 90 days, as determined by an independent evaluation. You'd receive your payment. They'd get full control. Everyone could walk away. What is the business currently valued at? Based on current income and profitability, it's approximately $3.5 million. $1.4 million was your potential profit. Considering the initial investment of $80,000, 5 years of underpaid labor due to belief in Natalie's vision, $1,400,000 seemed reasonable. Yet, it wasn't just about the money. If I instigated the buyout, where would they quickly obtain $1.4 million? Patricia gave a grim smile. That's their predicament. They'd need to secure a significant loan, attract investors Connor has been courting under unfavorable terms, or sell off assets. This would hinder their growth plans for years. Or they could hand back control to avoid the buyout. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. before anyone else. In my briefcase was Patricia's buyout notice, notarized and ready. Yet, I wanted to give Natalie one more opportunity. She came in at 8:30 with Connor. They looked taken aback by my early arrival. "Dad, do you have a decision?" Connor attempted to argue, but Natalie gently restrained him. "Let's have a moment," she requested. We stepped into the former shared office, filled with 5 years of shared experiences. Late night strategizing, our initial profitable month, her tears on my shoulder after a major order failed, and me guiding her through understanding P&L statements. "Natalie," I said, "do you recall the night before we signed the operating agreement? You questioned my eagerness for legal formalities. You mentioned that, as family, we didn't need lawyers. I remember. I explained to you that our familial bond is precisely why we required legal guidance, because business can drive people to do unspeakable acts even to those they cherish. I wanted to safeguard us both. Do you recall what you responded?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "You called me paranoid, and you said this company would always be ours united. Father, whatever happened to that young girl? I've grown up. 1. I got married. Becomes I recently tied the knot. 2. I'm trying to build something bigger than a lifestyle business. Becomes my goal is expanding beyond a typical lifestyle enterprise. 3. Lifestyle business. Is that what Connor calls it? Becomes, is this what you mean by a lifestyle company, Connor? 4. It's what it is. We could be doing $50 million in revenue. Becomes, that's what we're doing, reaching up to $50 million in sales. 5. We could go national, but not if we're stuck in the same patterns, the patterns that made us profitable and successful, the patterns that are holding us back. Becomes, expanding nationwide isn't possible if we keep relying on our proven but limiting strategies. 6. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the buyout notice. Becomes, I took out a document from my case, the buyout notice. 7. What is that? She asked. Becomes, what's this? She inquired. 8. Per the operating agreement section 7C, I'm formally triggering my buyout clause. You have 90 days to purchase my 40% equity at fair market value to be determined by an independent valuation becomes, according to the terms of our partnership agreement in section 7C. I've activated the buyout clause. In the following 90 days, you must acquire 40% of my shares at their current market value as assessed by a neutral appraiser. 9. If you can't meet the terms, my operational authority is automatically reinstated becomes, should you fail to fulfill these conditions, my control over operations will be restored. 10. The color drained from her face becomes, her complexion paled. 11. Dad? No. You want it professional. This is professional. This is exactly what the documents we signed are for. You can't do this. We don't have that kind of cash becomes, Father, no. This is still a business matter. It's precisely as the contracts we signed intended. You can't proceed like this. We simply don't have enough funds. 12. Then you'll need to get it. Connor's investor friends maybe becomes, you'll need to find a solution then, perhaps through Connor's investment contacts. Even though I had anticipated differently, they'll likely demand more than a 30% stake if they're ready to write such a substantial check at short notice. You're jeopardizing our business, the one I financed, and still hold 40% ownership in, according to those documents. Connor emerged from the doorway. What's happening? I handed him the notice. As he read it, his professional facade faded. This was not the situation he had prepared for. This is vindictive, he said. This is business. Indeed. You were the one pushing for everything to be formalized, weren't you? Well, congratulations. This is what professional business decisions can look like when you try to squeeze out the primary financial partner. Primary partner, Connor clarified. You own 40%. There's an interesting aspect about our agreement. We designed it so that no major financial commitments could be made without approval from both of us. That includes loans exceeding $50,000. If you aim to acquire funds for purchasing my stake, my consent is essential, something I won't grant. Connor appeared to grasp this, evident in his expression. He had misjudged me, overlooking the detail that an older man dealing in business could be sharp. He hadn't scrutinized the documents I arranged 5 years ago, specifically designed to thwart such a situation. You've maneuvered us into a predicament, Connor asserted. It was you who placed yourselves in this corner by considering me dispensable. Dad, please, Natalie interjected. There must be another solution. There is. Uphold the operating agreement. Respect the partnership we established. Regard me as a founding partner rather than an employee you're seeking to reduce. You want things to remain unchanged forever. I desire a place at the decision-making table. I aspire to be consulted, not just informed. I wish to cease being referred to as the one who initiated this venture, as if I were a discarded ladder you climbed and cast aside. Natalie took her seat. She seemed genuinely taken aback, as if she hadn't contemplated the impact of her speech and actions leading up to this point. I didn't intend to cause you distress, but I did. And Connor supported it because it aligned with his goal of gaining control over a prosperous company without having to establish one from the ground up. That's unfair, Connor retorted. I turned towards him. Could I ask something? When did you decide you wanted this company? Before or after you proposed to my daughter? It's preposterous. Are you involved in private equity? You seek out underestimated assets and purchase them. Lumiere was thriving, expanding, and had a founder nearing retirement who could be persuaded he was redundant. That made it an enticing target. I married Natalie because I love her. Perhaps. However, I believe you also married a chance, and she may be too close to see it. Leave, Natalie declared abruptly. Both of you depart from my office. Connor and I were about to speak. No, she said firmly. I can't think with both of you present. I need some space. 90 days commenced for the acquisition process. All right then, clear out. I'll manage. As I collected my belongings, I said to Natalie, I apologize it ended this way, but I won't be removed from our shared venture. Before she could respond, I left. The subsequent 30 days were the hardest of my life. Natalie ignored my calls. Margaret couldn't reach her. Connor communicated through his lawyer. The corporation employed a valuation firm. I supplied all required documents, and the assessment came back at $4.2 million, which was my 40%, translating to $1.68 million. They had 60 days to locate it. Patricia kept me updated daily. Connor attempted negotiations with 4 different lenders. All requested personal guarantees from him and Natalie, as well as liens on business assets. His investors sought 51% equity for that amount of capital, thereby gaining majority control. Every proposal was inferior to simply collaborating with me. On day 47, my phone rang. Natalie, Dad. May we discuss? Absolutely. Let's talk. In a coffee shop, a neutral location, we had a meeting. She appeared drained. I can't continue, she admitted. Acquiring the money would lead to our downfall. Connor's investors demand control. The banks want personal liabilities that could endanger our home. Each solution is more damaging than the issue we aim to resolve. I apologize. I responded sincerely. Are you won? She asked. No one has won, Natalie. This wasn't about winning. Then why were we here? I wondered. It was about being recognized. It was about being appreciated. About being treated as partners rather than problems to navigate around, she clarified. She gazed into her coffee. Connor mentioned, if we can't purchase your position, you regain your authority. The buyout clause has an automatic reinstatement provision. That's correct, I confirmed. So you regain control. We both gain control, as we always should have had. Connor proposes a restructuring. Bring him in officially as COO, making it 3 equal partners, he suggested. I shook my head. No, I'll work with you, Natalie, I replied. Her actions have clearly demonstrated her priorities. She is my wife. You must consider the implications for the business based on that fact, but that is my condition. We will continue to manage operations together as we did before. Connor may participate in your role as a spouse, but not as an executive within the company. He would never accept such a position. Therefore, you have some choices to make. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Patricia. It turned out that Natalie and Connor had filed for divorce. I can't pretend I wasn't taken aback, Margaret lamented. I attempted to reach Natalie numerous times before she responded. It wasn't only about the business, she explained. The business was merely a symptom. As you suspected, Dad, Connor saw an opportunity. When you initiated the buyout and he couldn't make it successful, he began discussing our plans when we were forced into bankruptcy. Not if, but when. He had already decided to let everything fall apart rather than collaborate with you. Natalie, I am deeply sorry. Don't blame yourself. You protected me. Just as you shielded me 5 years ago by pushing for that business contract, you knew something I didn't want to acknowledge. I didn't wish to be correct about this. I understand. May I return home for a brief period? I can't stay in the house at present. Of course, your room is prepared. She returned for 3 months during the divorce proceedings. We resumed our collaboration as before, repairing some of the damage. It took time. There were difficult discussions. She had to mourn her marriage and face how she treated me. I had to forgive her for allowing Connor's ambition to cloud her judgment. The divorce settlement awarded Connor nothing from the business. The prenuptial agreement I discreetly persuaded them to sign before the wedding safeguarded Natalie's stake. Connor left with whatever personal assets he brought into the marriage and nothing more. He contested it, claiming he deserved compensation for his consulting role. However, he was unable to overturn it. The judge considered the minimal time spent and lack of formal position or contracts, thus dismissed the case. As far as I know, Connor is now employed at another private equity firm, likely seeking new ventures. Natalie and I manage Lumiere jointly now, adjusting our ambitious growth strategies to suit our current size. We may not aspire to reach a $50 million valuation, but we're profitable, stable, and wholly self-owned. Margaret and I find his new partner appealing. We revised the operating agreement recently, including additional safeguards to prevent future partners from similar actions as Connor. Moreover, we implemented a provision. Neither of us can initiate a buyout unless we both concur the partnership is beyond repair. Refusing nuclear choices, we're in this collaboratively or not at all. Late at night, I ponder what my path would have been if I'd accepted a consultancy role, if I'd allowed Connor to gently eject me. I'd possess 40% equity, assuredly, but spectate from the sidelines as another ran the company I constructed. Witnessing my daughter learn too late what her spouse truly desired, the buyout clause wasn't vengeance, it was responsibility, reflecting their actions and making them comprehend their transformation. Occasionally, those we cherish require compulsion to confront consequences. It's the hardest action you'll undertake, yet at times, it's the most loving. For 5 years, I financed my daughter's aspiration. When her spouse sought to dismiss me, I reminded them both who truly owned that dream, not out of rancor, but out of love, because occasionally safeguarding someone necessitates shielding them from their own detrimental choices, even when they detest you for it, even when it strips you bare to do it. Occasionally, when luck is on your side, they eventually grasp the reasoning behind it.